The original Little Nightmares was very different. Some things had to be toned down to fit the PEGI 16 rating, entire locations and monsters were removed, even the plot of the game was different. This is why the original Little Nightmares was even more terrifying than the final game. Hello, hi, you're watching Rant, and today we're looking at the original Little Nightmares, also known as Hunger. This is an analysis of the original vision for the game and what could have been. Six was originally brought to the moor to serve the guests as a worker. Her task involved washing the visitors, as evidenced by this concept art, where Six can be seen scrubbing a grotesque guest. This is likely in reference to the bathhouse in Spirited Away, a Studio Ghibli film by Hayao Miyazaki, which served as huge inspiration for Little Nightmares 1. Perhaps this comparison was too similar, however, bordering on copying the masterpiece film, which could be why they opted to change this, making Six something of a stowaway instead. I like the idea that Six was supposed to be on the moor in the original version. She had a job to do, making her story more of a rebellious tale rather than that of escape. The chief designer of Little Nightmares stated that the beginning of the game was remade completely 3 to 4 times. Perhaps one of these iterations would have seen Six cleaning one of the guests, like the one in the concept art, who also appears in a painting in the game itself. There's also some concept art representing what the bathhouse area would have looked like. It's a shame we didn't get to see this, but hey, a bunch of naked guests being washed and maintaining a PEGI 16 rating might have been pushing it. Now let's take a look at some of the locations that never made it into the final game. In the early trailers for the game, there is numerous locations that didn't find their way into the final release, one being the sewer area, similar to the depths. This suggests that the developers may have intended for Six to encounter the granny, but opted to save it for its own DLC. I wonder how this would have differed from the Runaway Kids adventure. We also get a glimpse of a shower room that isn't in the game, a spiral staircase, a crawl space underneath the guest section, an unused empty dining area, and a door stained with bloody fingerprints on it. The original version of the prison is essentially the same. The only difference is a cut sequence where we have to balance on a pipe right under the janitor's nose. The original idea for what the meat grinder room would have looked like was a lot more gruesome and ugh. The guest chapter would have featured the Wax Bellman, a cut character who spies on guests throughout the moor. It's pretty well known that the Wax Bellman was supposed to have a large role in the game before his removal. At Gamescom 2016, the Wax Bellman is presented peering through a two-way mirror. A similar mirror is found in the bathroom of the guest area, which Six can break to reveal a hidden room with a single wooden chair. So why was the guest area cut down so much? Well, once you get to this point, you're nearing the end of the game, so it was likely shortened for pacing reasons, and to leave the two-way mirror as ambiguous as possible without relying on a cheap jump scare from the Wax Bellman. The character designs also differed in some ways. The gnome's original design was very different. Instead of the cone-like shape, the heads resembled barrels. As for the janitor's original design, concept art reveals that his eye sockets would have been visible, but it's mostly unchanged. Some of the leeches were depicted with 2 legs. This is evident in the concept art and unused animations of the leeches standing up, running, and even flipping. One of the biggest changes they made was killing off the janitor pretty early on. In our first exposure to the game, back when it was called Hunger instead of Little Nightmares, the janitor was present in later chapters, appearing in the kitchen and the guest areas. In the original game, the janitor would have appeared earlier and more frequently, even in his bedroom. Imagining him stalking us through the entire game as originally intended is genuinely terrifying. The chefs we know and love used to be a trio, with a third chef in the mix. The third chef can be seen in portraits and old teaser trailers. He's essentially the same in appearance, but perhaps he was more bloodthirsty than his 2 brothers, with a preference for making dishes where the main ingredient is children. It's also possible that the moor was originally meant to have some kind of eye protruding out of the top of it, as depicted in early concept art presented in 2014. This is seen again in an actual painting in the game. The paintings are significant because they often have lore implications. It also suggests that this is how the moor would have looked in the game's first envisioning. While the feature was cut, it hinted an earlier version of the moor as something even more sentient and sinister. Early concept art for one of the shadow children looks eerily similar to another painting seen in the game. Perhaps the lady's minions were originally going to be comprised entirely of fire, able to reignite in the dark and take us by surprise. This would raise questions about the true extent of the lady's powers, reinforcing her as the most powerful foe in the moor. There were also some paintings that got removed from the game for being too dark. This one looks like someone who has slain a walrus-like creature. The blood surrounding it is probably why it got removed. But who is this mysterious figure? Perhaps they are responsible for sourcing most of the moor's food by taking down gigantic beasts to harvest meat, as it's very unlikely that all the meat is children, as most of it is far too large. Regardless, I don't think the guest can tell the difference. There's two more, one that I can't really make out, so comment what you think it could be, but this one is interesting. A closer look at this painting and it appears to be a humanoid creature resembling the mysterious eye motif seen throughout the game, and the eye concept art for the more. While there's no confirmation, the aesthetic also matches that of the collapsing signal tower in Little Nightmares 2. Perhaps this is the true villain of Little Nightmares, the creator and orchestrator of all the decay and despair in the world, a monster that feeds off the suffering of children and adults alike. Could this be the final boss in Little Nightmares 3?